Here we go. I noticed also
Okay.
that you had the Bitcoin flare. I
Yes.
don't think they have an Ethereum flare, do they?
They need one.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. That red T opening is actually what I started playing as a kid first.
Yeah. I just prepared King's Indian attack.
Okay.
So
I'll play a symmetrical position. Do you play the King's Indian as black as well?
I play the Nimzo. It's black.
Okay. Because usually people who play this opening with white play it because they also do it with the black side of the pieces. Is this
Yeah.
your regular opening?
Um, I learned the Spanish exchange variation as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because my teacher just loves the Spanish exchange. He thinks the Endgame is really easy to play and stuff like that. But I didn't really get into it too much yet.
I've actually had some really bad losses today. I think I've been getting sleepier since it's almost midnight here. So you never
Yeah.
know what could happen.
You never know.
Okay, do you want me to trade queens and going to an endgame, or should I try to keep the queen on the board and keep
Up
the
to you.
complexity?
Up to you.
So I think your h4 move may have been a little bit too early, because now it's going to be hard for you to kick my bishop out of g4.
Yeah.
Whereas if your pawn was still on h2, you could have kicked it away. One of the
Yeah.
things you have to be careful about in this line is just putting pressure on that f3 knight. So I'm going to try to do
Yeah.
that here. I'm not even sure, chat, what his best move would be here. It almost feels like he has to bring
So I
the
play
knight back.
pawn c3. Does that help? Let's see. Takes.
Yeah, I'll let you try to calculate that line out. I'm pretty sure if he plays c3, I take, bishop takes, queen takes, bishop takes, bishop takes, rook takes, and then the problem is that e4 is hanging, which is why I think he has to play knight d2. I could be wrong. I think that's the issue with it. So let's see how far he goes into the calculation here. This is actually a very good training puzzle for anybody who wants to try to do it. So what was the variation you calculated after c3?
So I thought you'll have to move the knight. If you take the knight, then after it takes.
What do you take with? I know it's obvious, but just to make sure we're on the
Take,
same line.
take with the bishop. And then you can do queen, bishop takes bishop, or queen takes queen.
So if I take your queen, how do you respond?
Then simply bishop takes queen.
And then what do you think I would play after that? Or let's say that I would take your bishop on d1, you recapture
Yeah.
with the rook.
Yeah.
Is there anything to be worried about in that position? And it's already thinking pretty far ahead, so we could also slow down a little.
I guess you have some knight moves like.
Yes, it
Wait,
is a knight
yeah.
move after that. So the problem.
I guess I'm possibly hanging my pawn
Yep.
on e4.
Yeah, exactly. The pawn on e4. I mean, honestly, this is a pretty long tactic, but I think for that reason, if you go back one move before
Yeah.
c3, were there any other options to defend your knight on f3?
I mean, there's rook e3.
Okay, and what other options?
There's also, let's see. There's also, actually, the best is probably just knight h2.
Yeah, knight h2.
Knight f2.
Knight
Yeah.
fh2 is a great move,
Yeah.
because you're attacking the bishop and you're defending your knight at the same time.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of a weird move because you don't usually want to put your knight on h3. I know you're looking towards e3 in these positions.
Yeah.
And c3 is a very intuitive move. But I think
Yeah.
that the takeaway so far in the opening is, in the King's Indian attack, you often want to play h4. Just be careful with the timing.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to go back to c6 so we can continue playing the opening.
Okay.
Yeah. I like this move. It looks weird, but it makes sense because knight e3 could have been a little bit complicated. I liked knight e3 as well, because if I would take on f3,
Yeah.
you could take with your queen and protect the pawn and your knight's more active, but honestly it feels weird to bring the queen out, so this makes sense. Now it's my turn to try to come up with a decent move here. I'm trying to decide whether I want to keep the pin with bishop h5, but I think that could be problematic after something like bishop g5. So I might actually have to give my bishop pair away or retreat, so I'll retreat and try to keep the bishops. My coach would be proud. That's what he always tells me.
Okay. I guess now I have knight g5 to further harass the bishop. I mean, my plan is to be able just to play h5, h6 if I can't get it. But
right, you are playing the King's Indian
kind of-
attack, so you're going for that.
So going for that. So
But it also helps to try to come up with like a breadth of options first before going too deep
Yeah.
into one variation, just to always make sure you don't miss something.
yeah,
Because otherwise, a lot of chess players end up getting tunnel vision.
yeah. I mean, I guess I can just develop my bishop too, just play a natural move. And if I provoke h6, it's okay because it's a weakening for you.
Okay, so you're considering knight g5, bishop g5. Yep.
Just taking the g5 square. Also,
If you, yeah, we'll keep going with all of the options of move first, and then we could look a little deeper into the variations.
yeah. I mean, in theory, I should just move my queen too to avoid the queen trade.
So if I take your queen and you recapture with the rook, you get the open file. So usually,
Yes, that's good for me.
yeah, exactly. So that's why you don't want to be the first to trade the queen. But things
Yeah.
like queen c2 could make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would just normally do knight
Knight g5.
g5. Just
Okay.
because if you do the pawn, then I can just take anyways.
Yep, that looks like a good move.
And the bishop is the light bishop as well. So
Yeah, you know,
I want to get rid of it.
yes, good bishops versus bad bishops. And for those of you watching, if you're not familiar, a good bishop doesn't have the pawns as the same color as it is. So this is a light squared bishop, whereas my dark squared bishop has a pawn on e5, which will probably be stuck there for a while unless he plays something like f4. So now I have to decide if I'm really going to fight to keep my light squared bishop, or if I should just move something like queen e7 and let you take it and recapture with my queen.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to try to keep my bishop here, though. So I'm going to play a weird-looking move. I'm going to play bishop c4.
I mean, now I have some moves like there's a hanging pawn on c5. I could attack with the bishop. The bishop itself is hanging, so I could develop the queen to a4. Don't know if that's a good square to put my queen on long term, but it's an idea.
The thought process out loud is good. It helps me see how you're thinking about it.
Yeah, so I mean, my knight's positions are fine. I could develop my other knight to f3, but I don't have to. There's no reason to. Blocks my bishop again. So I think I like harassing the bishop just because you don't have that many squares actually. Like you'll have to go.
So queen a4, where do you think I would play?
You'll have to play bishop a6.
Are there any other moves I could try?
Yeah, actually, the nice move for you would be pawn b5, and then I lose a tempo, and your bishop is well placed.
Yeah. That's kind of a tricky variation where I do get b5 with a tempo, and then you could put your queen back on c2, and your plan after could be to then kick out my bishop with b3. So you could go for something like that, but if you like that plan, you'd kind of have to go for the entire variation. Or the other move you suggested with bishop e3, I also like, because you're just focusing on developing pieces that haven't moved yet.
I think the bishop move is safer.
Cool. Yeah, I cannot say anything bad about this move. All right, well, I'm just going to defend the pawn then, and also open up d8 and try to bring one of my rooks on the open file.
Yeah, so...
Also, are you okay holding the mic still?
Yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm using both hands now, so I'm kind of...
That he didn't have the stand for his mic, so he's been holding it. He's a trooper.
Because now I can provoke using the queen, or I could just right away harass the bishop with the pawn and then try to build a pawn chain, which should be good for me. Although right now your knight is dominated by my pawn on c3, so if I moved it, you'd have more squares. Like your knight could go to b4 at some point. If I did like b3, c4.
Right, yeah. If you'd move your pawn off of c3, you would give me that d4 square.
Yeah, so... Yeah, let's do this queen. I think we provoke it just to do something. Although, maybe now.
And also, so I hear you thinking of a lot of individual moves. Another
Yeah.
thing that is really helpful as you're moving out of the opening into the middle game is trying to think of kind of like a general strategy. And
Yeah.
sometimes you don't need to do it, especially if you're familiar with openings. But for example, it'd be a more broader thing like, am I trying to go for doubling the rooks on the D file? Am I trying
Yeah.
to push on the king side sooner? Or maybe do I want to
Yeah.
go for a
Yeah.
queen side attack? And usually, if you have that overarching theme, it's easier to find good moves.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I guess vacating D1 is okay. Then I can move my rook out later.
Yeah, but I'll also say this is just a really slow, close position, so a lot of it is just slowly improving the position of your pieces. It's not as
Yeah.
fun as some of the more tactical lines. And now I have to make a decision, basically, do I want to play bishop a6 or do I want to push b5? And I'm actually not sure what is better here. Okay, so I'm thinking b5, queen c2, pushing his knight away, and then moving my bishop. I don't want to lose my bishop yet. All right, I'm going to go for the fun line. I'm going to play b5.
So C2 is forced.
Yeah, c2 felt like the best option. I'm glad you didn't consider a6, because it's tempting to just
That's
attack the knight, but what are you going to do?
very ugly. It's a very ugly place.
Yeah, that's true.
Actually, when Ty and I first started taking lessons, we first took from a guy named Michael Royas, who's also a really good teacher. But
Oh.
he was just too good. Like, he was too good. So he'd say stuff like, oh, like, clearly you don't take the pawn there. It's like, you can retake it later, kind of thing. And it's just, it was hard to follow.
Oh, he was too good of a chess player?
Yeah. So he was like, I think he's probably the guy, like, if you're already really good and you want to get a little bit better, he would have been the guy. But
Yeah, different levels of coaches work better, I feel, for different student ratings.
Yeah. So I think, can I make a bigger threat? I can't really make a bigger threat.
So the reason why I'm trying to kick out your knight now is because I know you have b3 coming to kick my bishop, and I want to be able to retreat it to e6.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Yep. Did you consider b3 at all?
Just right away. You mean, I think it's worse for me because after takes, you win the pawn, right?
Yep. I just wanted to check that you had considered that. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, so knight f3, only good move here. Okay, so now I guess it's time for me to start competing for the open file. And it's actually interesting because I have to make a decision. Do I want to move my f rook to d8 or do I want to move my 8 rook to d8? And this is where the larger strategy usually comes to take place. Do I think I'm going to be attacking on the queen side or the king side?
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with the f rook because I think my pawns are more aggressive towards the queen side, and that might be where the future is going.
Yeah. So do I want to kick the bishop first? I think answer is yes because it's taking up too much space. It's controls too many squares.
So if you kick the bishop away with b3, where can I go with the bishop? What are my options?
Actually, the board has changed now with the rook move. You have more space now. You have bishop d3, which is a very annoying move.
Exactly.
Because the queen has almost no squares. That is in fact the next threat. So I think probably the correct move is just rook a d1 to prevent that.
Yep. And what? So why are you picking your a rook over your e rook?
Just because it's less active, so this brings it into the game.
And if you move your rook to d1, what happens if I take your pawn on a2?
If you take the pawn on a2, then it's hard to reclaim it, actually.
This is actually a poison pawn, so I can't take your pawn on a2.
Yeah. I think the reason is that you get trapped by pawn b3.
Yep. Yeah.
And I just win the bishop outright.
Exactly. I have nowhere to go. Your queen's attacking the bishop. I can't defend it, so I can't take on a2. And you're right. Your rook on e1 is having some pressure towards e4 and where more of the action is.
Yeah.
Okay. That was a good move. And now it's... I feel like I have a good position. I have a lot of space, but I really need to figure out how I can improve it. I'm considering moves like a5 if I want to push on the queen side. I noticed that your knight on h2 isn't moving, so you'll probably need to reposition it soon. So I feel like I have some time. And I'm also trying to see if you have any threats that I need to be careful of with pushing pawns on the king side. And now you can actually play b3, so I need to consider that as well. So my only attempt would be something like b4, but that's just not going to work because you could take it and then my bishop is hanging. So I guess I'm just going to let you do it and go for my plan of trying to get more space on the queen side.
Right, so I guess now, aside from b3 right away, do I have any other options?
Do your viewers usually meme like this?
They are really insane. I'm not even reading it just because I'm gonna.
Oh, sorry. I my chat also trolls me, and I usually assume it's friendly.
I'm trying to focus because I know I'll just laugh too much if I read this.
You'll laugh too much. Okay, yeah, I agree. I agree. This is a fun focus.
I mean, so the funny thing is, before this, a lot of people were saying like, if he plays this move, that means he will dump everything on us, or he will.
They were trying to predict based on your chest.
And yeah, so.
That's
I think
funny.
there was like this famous day, like during the March crash. I think I posted this like 10-second video of otters just like
and
flopping down the street in Singapore.
Right?
And then the market
Yeah,
crashed
yeah.
from like 8,000 to 4,000. So that was kind of amusing for people.
Okay, please no
okay,
otters again.
No more otters.
Protect
yeah.
our bags.
Pawn move is an option. You will probably retreat. Obviously, I don't want to take rook takes rook because you control the open file with rook a d8. My knight develop is an option, but it's not. It's kind of like an undeveloped almost.
I hope he sees b3 here now that d3 is defended.
I think I kick the bishop first because then your b5 pawn will be hanging long term as well. It's a little bit hard to defend for you.
Yeah, I like this move. I think it makes sense to kick out my bishop.
Yeah.
I think there is some like more interesting ideas too with like knight d2 if you wanted to kick it out and push f4, but
Yeah.
that is a very different aggressive plan that I don't even necessarily think is good here. So I like this.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is actually a really good middle game position where you basically are starting to need to figure out what your plan is.
Yeah. So
Chat, let's look at it from his point of view too, so we see his position. So as you can tell, he has a little bit less space on the board, which is hard. He needs to
so
improve
generally
his
I'm
pieces.
still going for the king side attack somehow, but you have a lot of pieces on that side now, so it's not really that appealing to overcommit there too much.
That's good insight to question the plans, even if it's a plan you usually do with the King's Indian attack. Definitely, it won't always work.
Yeah, like there's potential to open up to just like play knight d2 to then go pawn c4, and then after takes, knight takes, and the knight is kind of rerouted to that side where maybe.
And what happens if instead of taking,
targets.
I push the pawn on b4?
Then I think that's fine for me because I just now have a pawn chain I think the pawn structure is better for me.
You also mentioned something earlier that would happen if you push the pawn from c3 to c4. That was a very strong point.
Oh, true. Because it gives you a knight outpost again later.
Yeah, knight outpost with a chess vocab. Nice.
Avoid changing the pawn structure there because right now the pawn is protecting those squares for the knight.
Which might actually give you some insight on what I might try to do, because if I want to get my knight to d4, something I could be considering is moves like b4 to try and, take the c3
to try to
pawn.
force it. Yeah, to try to force it. So I guess an interesting move to prevent that would be a3, because then I could just take, and then you wouldn't be able to retake because your knight will be hanging. I mean, you could do take takes, but you couldn't do the third take.
Right.
Like you couldn't do the second take.
Yep.
So that's interesting. Maybe I tried that.
Yeah, I think this is a nice defensive move against b4, and starting to stop the pawns. It's already starting to become a little bit of a difficult position just because I have more space. But this is a nice way to stop b4. So if I can't get b4, what can I do here? I do wonder if I could play a4 here. Yeah, a4 might be a really annoying move. So the reason why a4 would be an annoying move, what would happen if you take with the b pawn.
I mean, just after retakes, you can get your bishop on b3.
Actually, a good question here is if I play a4, you play b takes a4. Should you take with the pawn or the rook as black?
Definitely with the pawn, right? Because then you can create a bishop pawn thing on a4, b3.
Yeah, so I think at first glance that looks better because you're getting your bishop on b3.
Actually,
And honestly, you're controlling d1, so it actually could have some like tactical improvement. But from a strategic point of view, if I would play a4, b takes a4, usually I would want to take with the rook.
I guess the rook just gets much more active that way.
Yeah.
And you're immediately threatening a3, which is now isolated.
Right.
As well.
And then what's the difference between our pawn structure on the queen side? Because you'd have your pawn on a3 and c3, and I'd have my pawn on c5 and b5.
I mean, yours are connected, mine are not, so it's gonna be harder for me to defend in the end game.
Exactly. So if I'm going for more of like a strategic play where I'm trying to get by even with one pawn, I would take with the rook. If I take with a pawn, I would make sure that like by bringing the bishop to b3, you can't come to d1, I have some kind of advantage. But I think rook takes would be easier to play.
Yeah.
And then if I play a4, and your other option is to push b4, what should black play after b4?
Black should... I mean, black has just the immediate tactic, right? Which is bishop b3.
Yep. Yeah, bishop b3.
Which is a lot of pain. Because, I guess I lose the exchange.
Well, actually,
it's not terror.
I'm going to make you work out your tactics here. After bishop b3, how can white try to save the rook on d1?
Rook takes rook check, and then the queen moves.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then you move your queen after. After that line, I mean, I still like my position better for black. I'm going to try it out, or I could do another move and we could try to keep the position more even if you think that'd be better for like a nice instructive game.
Sure. Let's do that.
The latter or the former?
Up to you. It's
okay.
fine.
Okay, I'm going to play something that I wanted to actually be more of an instructive game. So let's say, and also if you were playing somebody around your level, I don't think they would pick the right pawn to push forward here. Let's say... Okay, I also don't want to make a move that's so bad that I'll lose, but I want to do one that makes the game more even. Let me think of what that would be. Rook b8. Which is a move that I would kind of expect from someone around 14 to 1500 because it looks like you're supporting the pawns you want to push.
So obviously I need to fix my weakness, which is what you would have done. You would have played a4 normally, so...
Yep.
Given that, I think... a4 is an idea to just prevent the other a4.
Okay, yep, a4 is one option.
Another option is to just exchange the rook now.
So chat, I hope he also considers b4. It looks a little tricky, but it does do a good job at stopping the pawns. But we're going to let him think here. This game looks like playing homework. What are you talking about? This is
like going a4.
So
later.
So before you play a4, did you also consider... Oh, so whenever you have these pawns that are blockading each other, there's actually a lot of chess puzzles that have been formed around these pawns that have like a row of empty pawns between. I know I'm explaining that weird, but at least we have it here on the board.
I know what you mean. Usually you push the middle one, I know that.
If it's an end... Like so you know the endgame tactic. Yeah. But it's also important to just try to look through most of the pawn pushes and make sure you've at least considered them.
Yeah, so I think the C pawn push it could be okay as well.
The C pawn push, as we've talked about, it does allow d4, but...
It allows the knight, but then I would just exchange it at this point.
And what about b4?
b4... takes
which pawn would you take with, just so that I follow you?
So black would take with the either one, and then after retakes the knight can still be attacked after takes, but so takes, and then I'm attacking the knight, but the pawn is hanging, so you would do knight takes. So I think you win a pawn there, right?
Okay, so b4.
If I push b4, I think you win a pawn.
So let's say b4, A takes
Yeah.
b4, how does white continue there?
Let's say c takes b4.
And then what are black's options there?
I guess then maybe something like rook c8 to defend the knight and have the rook face the queen.
Yeah, so
knight.
rook c8 is definitely something I would want to do after I take the pawn.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't end up losing a pawn with b4.
No, you don't lose a pawn. It's still safe because you have the a3 pawn guarding it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the only other thing was with the move you considered with a4.
Yeah.
If you play a4, how would black respond there?
a4, then black plays b4.
Okay, b4 is not a bad option. What about b takes a4?
Yeah, that's also good. And then you again have the threat on the b3 pawn, right?
Exactly. So that's what you have to be careful about with a4, because it's going to open up the b file, which now that I've placed my rook on b8, I have an extra supporter for b3. So by pushing a move like b4, you're pushing a pawn on the file that I wanted to open. And you know that I wanted to open the file because I put my rook there. So that's why it could be kind of helpful when you're considering where your opponent moved their rooks behind their pawn to think about where they want to open it. Yeah.
Interesting. So b4 kind of is the safest place.
It is, because it's already kind of a difficult position, but for the options that you have here.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So now I have to think about which pawn I want to take with. And I think I need to take with the A pawn, because if I take with the C pawn and you recapture, your queen is attacking my knight. So I would rather keep the C pawn so that my knight is not under attack.
Yeah. Okay, so like we said, I have to do C takes, otherwise it's not good because I will lose pawn.
Yeah, because C pawn is opening up the C file, correct? Also,
yes.
I'm not going to distract you with chat, but someone said, when Su emote, which was nice. Okay, so now if I take on b4, I am probably in trouble. If you want, I could push c4 and we can keep analyzing the game, or I could take on b4 and see if you can win.
Up to you. It's always up to you.
Okay.
I'm pretty chill.
Okay, I always like giving fun options here. Okay, let's do a little bit more analysis then, actually, because I think this is still a good training position. So I'm going to push c4.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I like...
You guys, I switched boards so you could think about it from his point of view.
Here. Like c5, bishop c5. Is that good? Let's see. Some other ideas would be... Yeah, I think bishop c5 is interesting because also it adds the defender back to e4. Right now it's only got the queen defending, so there's some spots where I'll lose it later. There's no real knight reroutes I can do now. I think it's kind of just the knights are pretty stuck. I guess another idea would be to try to add an attacker to the e5 pawn via the queen. So something like queen c3 maybe.
Yeah, all of these ideas are great so far.
Yeah, I think it's hard to say which is the best.
Yeah.
But
I will say this is a slow position, so usually you don't have to be as precise here, and you could probably like do a combination of all of these ideas.
Yeah. Let's do queen. Actually, I don't like the queen on the long diagonal because long term I feel like the bishop is facing it. There's some problems maybe because after I take the pawn, I'm like almost pinned. Like if you allowed it, then my queen would just be pinned to the knight anyway. So it's not that great of a threat. I think what I want to do is double my rooks possibly on this file, just because maybe first get my bishop over and then double my rooks because I think your queen. No, but actually, I guess if I do that, it is an improvement of my queen position. I think so. I like c5 as the first move, just because I think it's a strict improvement.
Okay, I like bishop c5. I mean, I think you're thinking about the strategy correctly here. The only thing I would add is you probably do want to bring your horse on h2 into action at some point, especially in these slow positions where you have time to bring them back into the game.
Yeah.
Okay, so I need to move my queen here, which I will... Let's see, where do I want to go? Okay, I'll play queen c7.
Something like rook d2 and then rook e d1 is an idea. But I guess the knight is just so bad on h2 that I'll probably get... I mean, just going knight f1, e3 seems more solid.
So if you would get your knight on e3, and then if I try to play knight d7 and kick out your bishop, what would you play?
Knight d7, you said?
Yeah.
Then I could go knight d5, attacking your queen.
I like the idea of knight d5. I think you have an even better move, though, if I would play knight d7. And you could even imagine it in this position if I play knight d7.
Knight d7 here, I just have bishop d6 immediately.
Yep, perfect. So then you don't have to be worried about me kicking out the bishop. And I do like your idea of trying to get your knight on an outpost as well.
Okay, let's do it.
If I keep my pieces where they are, I'm going to have 3 attackers on d5.
Yep.
So at least you won't be able to play knight d5 right away. You could do it if you end up moving your knight off of f3, because then your bishop would also end up defending d5. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to basically put pressure on what I think is the weakest part of your position. Do you have any idea what that might be?
I mean, a3 is hanging.
Yeah.
So that's...
Yeah, you got it right away.
Weakness.
Yeah. Yeah, a3, so it's a backwards pawn, and I'm just going to try to put pressure on it.
Wonder if just exchanging rooks here is best now. I mean, the pawn is just hard to defend. If I defend it, it's just tying a big piece to it forever, which is probably not worth it. I think I probably want to take pieces off the board in my position now, just because it's weaker. And I have the a pawn, so maybe long term it's a slightly better pawn to have.
Your instincts are really good. If we remove the heavy pieces, the rooks and the queen, then your pawn on a3 is less weak, since it can't be, attacked from the open files.
Yeah, it's... At the same time, there's not too many ways. It's just bad to protect. It's just, you just tie everything down. And you'll just have really easy development as well of all your pieces later. I think we exchange it.
Okay, I'll take with my rook.
I mean, it's such a dry position.
It is a very close position.
This is I think I have time to do knight e3 here. There's no real threats.
If you do knight e3, it actually... The only thing you need to be careful with when I'm controlling the open file is to make sure that you can still put your pieces on the open file. And the cool thing about knight e3 is that it adds an extra defender on d1.
To d1, right?
Yeah.
The other option is just to play rook d1 straight away.
Right.
And just like force trading everything kind of thing. But
You also have another weird slow plan that's also a knight move, but it's a weird plan. I'm curious if you can find it.
So obviously knight d2 is pretty bad. So
It looks bad. Knight d2 looks bad.
Yeah, it looks pretty bad, but is there a plan there that's interesting? Well, if you say it looks bad, but there must be the answer. As you say it looks bad.
Yeah, I maybe hinted it a bit too much. I guess it doesn't really work here because you have to take care of knight d4 as well. But the idea was knight d2 and then knight b1, because you're defending your pawn on a3, but also you can then reposition your knight on b3 and put pressure on b5. So it's at least a plan worth considering.
Yeah, makes sense.
But a very strange plan for sure.
It just feels like an undeveloped, and then also like the knight there can be really bad later. Like it can get trapped in some spots, I feel. But
it wouldn't get trapped on c3, but the problem with that plan is that it's very slow, and what could I do to react? I think your intuitions about this position were correct. I hope I didn't complicate it by making you think of all the knight plans.
I think I'll just do rook d1, or I can do a knight. I'll just do this.
Okay, yeah. I liked rook d1, but knight e3 I think also works. The reason I liked rook d1 is because you were also defending d4, which seems like one of my more annoying threats here. Because now I can play on d4, which the problem with that is that it would give me some pass pawns.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, so if I play knight d4 here, then it's going to be really hard to defend that as black. Okay, let's say another move that I may have considered would have been rook a8.
See, we have some ideas to defend it with our queen while also threatening e5. So queen c3 seems okay. It also adds an attacker to the d4 key square. The problem with that though is that I just directly hang my pawn on e4. So
Yep.
that's just not good. So I probably can't do that. I only really have the rook to be able to save it. So I think I have to do that.
Yeah, I think this was the only move you had here. So I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play a move that is not good for black, but that I still have chances to. And I'm going to let you try to win the position as white. I won't hint it. And then at the end of the game, whether you win or lose, we could just go over if there was any moves you could have better played. Does that sound okay?
Sure.
Okay, cool. All right, let's try this.
Yeah. Just bishop takes is probably best. Bishop is hanging. Can't pawn take obviously because I hang the rook. So just do bishop takes and everything's fine.
Yep. Okay. And now it's on me to try to find interesting moves and save this.
Okay.
Okay. So I think I need to start with trading off my bad bishop for yours, even though I wouldn't normally trade when I'm down. Also, my chat is saying you have a very good ASMR voice.
That'll be my backup career.
There you go.
Bitcoin goes to 0. This might be forced to trade because if I don't, you just take and I can't retake unless I defend the rook. Actually, I have some other ideas. I can do.
Okay. I'm gonna take with the king, which looks weird, but I want to keep the pressure on a3. Since my only chance here is to basically try to get those passers or win a pawn back.
I think my plan is to just trade every piece now.
Yeah, if you traded the pieces, you'd be winning.
The best way to do that is to bring my bishop into the game, bring my knights to the game. So knight.
I'm actually curious. I think he might end up winning this. He's been playing very well, and I think giving him a piece for a pawn might be too strong of odds.
I need to get my pieces in. So the best way to get pieces in is just to go knight d1 to go c3. Something like that seems fine. Let's say you push, I still can't take. So maybe the best is to just put my queen back first, just to play a safe move. And then I'm not as worried about the pin.
Okay, so now you're not worried about b4. In which case, I need to come up with something more creative. I will. Now I have to see if your queen on c2, it was defending e4, so I need to calculate if knight takes e4 works. Ironically, it's still kind of scary, even though I finally get a chance. It's actually very scary for knight takes e4, because I wonder what happens if you play knight d2 after. I can't take it because my rook on a8 is hanging. So I think I will just play another move. Yeah, now it's actually very hard, and I'm going to have to try to figure out some kind of strategy here. I think I actually need to also play king g7 at some point, so that when your knight moves, I'm defending h6.
Yeah, the h6 is a discover. It's part of the nice thing about queen c1. So now that's safe. Do we have any ideas here? Like maybe sack pawn h5 at some point? No, it's not good because the knight can take. Not that good of a move.
Yeah, knight goblin, I would. He does want to trade, but he can't really trade here. Maybe he could try something like rook b1, but then I play queen c5. It's actually not that easy. He should probably
my
get
bishop
his...
is really bad. It's just blocked by all my pieces. If I bring it to f1, is that bad? Is that still bad? It's still kind of bad, although less bad. Your pawn on b5 is now hanging and a weakness for you, so if I can attack that, that's useful. Is there a nice way to attack that?
Since he has to be careful about not losing e4, and he has more pieces, so if he brings him to the queen side, that's probably how he'd win.
Can do like queen b1 now to just attack the pawn, or is queen?
He also would defend
better?
it. I wonder if he's
Queen
gonna
b2 is
do
also
that.
nice. It hits a new weakness.
Yeah.
E5, which is a double attack piece. So I'm kind of hitting two pieces at once with queen b2.
That's a good move. It's actually a really annoying move. I'm actually in a lot of trouble if he plays that. I was telling my chat how I'm in trouble if you play queen b2, and you played it. Okay, now I am losing more pawns than I would like. If you trade queens, it's probably winning for you almost.
Yeah, because I can just push the A pawn
Yeah,
later.
yeah. So I basically have to avoid that at all costs. And I guess here, my queenside pawns are the best chance I have at saving this game, so probably would rather give you e5 than b5 if I do it in some kind of clever way. But I'm also considering c3 here, to at least make things tricky. Okay, well, I guess my best chance here is kind of to go for a desperado, things that are not great, but it gives me a higher
Yeah.
chance of you messing up.
Sure. Okay, so c3, it's a threat on my queen. Need to check if queen takes b5 is okay here. Can't really block the site with the knight because the bishop is once queen takes e4. So
I think queen takes b5 is a very
I
good
can just
move for
blockade
him
it though with the rook, and it will take you some time to get around. So that seems okay to just go rook c1. Although then I will hang my a3 pawn. But obviously I know that this is a bad position for you, so there should be a way to not care about that.
Yeah, chat, this is the same game. We've been discussing the games and trying to treat it more like an educational game.
I think it's fine because after you retake the pawn with, I mean, you take the a3 pawn, I can then collect the c2 pawn because I have rook and knight on it. So, and my queen is in a good position too to later take e5. So I think it's just okay. I think everything is safe. The key is that it's a dark square on c1, so your bishop is useless. You can't get any combos going, I feel.
Yeah, it's a very tough game for black in this position.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that was a very thorough calculation. Yes, it's c2, rook c1, you saw the hanging pawn, and you saw that you could recapture that, so that was perfect. And now my question is, how can I make this as complicated as possible for you? I think my trickiest bet is probably rook a5. As soon as we trade things off, I think it's lost. I mean, it already is lost, but this is the best bet.
Okay, so queen's under attack. What do we want to do? We want to just move in a simple way out of danger. Don't really have that many moves. Almost not many safe squares. I think b4 is one of the only squares.
No, we gave him more time, chat. We gave him more time.
And no other attacks really. So.
Sorry, which square did you say?
Queen b4.
Okay.
I think that's my only square really.
It's very annoying that you're defending everything. I would have at least loved to gobble up the e4 pawn. That would have given me some chances here.
I think it was forced because the queen has no other square that I could find. I mean, there's b1, which also guards the pawn, but it just seems worse.
Yeah, exactly.
This is actually the structure of a lot of my games with Ty, because Ty is much better than me now at this point. And so he'll sack pieces and then try to like win it back. And then I just like try to hold.
Yeah, I mean, I when I play my friends who are stronger, I also like playing with some odds. Usually I do time odds, but it's fun because it makes the games more level, and also I usually learn more when it's like that, and then they give me tips.
This has been really helpful actually.
Oh, I'm glad. I mean, at this point, I think I just need to try to play for tricks, so yeah. I'm just gonna try to be tricky here.
Yeah. So I have to find the precise defense of everything. So. The idea of this bishop move, why is it tricky? The reason it's tricky is because you later have rook a4.
I shouldn't have told you it was tricky.
Well, I mean.
I know, I'm just teasing.
Yeah. So do I just prevent rook a4 by playing pawn a4 myself? Does that work? Could be the best move. Is there a simpler move? Maybe knight d5. Is that good? Knight d5 and the queen must move. No, after knight takes pawn, you'll pick up pawn that way.
Chat, you guys are very funny. Please let him win. If he loses, he'll run all our stops.
Pawn a4 is kind of the easiest. You can also do maybe rook c1. Rook c1 just because it's a nice force trade. Like if you do rook a4. I do queen takes pawn, but I do hang a pawn that way, so maybe it's unnecessary.
He doesn't hang a pawn because he wins. Well, I guess he kind of does, but it's easier, I think. I think a4 gives me chances after c2.
No, actually, the problem with pushing it, that then if you go c2 and then I do rook c1, then you can take it with the bishop, and then you have the bishop guarding c2, right?
Oh, that's what I was hoping you'd miss.
So that doesn't work. At this point, do I just like blockade it with my knight? Blockade the pawn, protect the c3 pawn at the same time, and then if you do bishop a4 anyways to attack the knight, what do I do? I don't know. I'm not sure what I do.
If he plays knight c2, I'll play rook a4
Maybe the
instead.
simplest is just to try to force a trade of queens here.
That is the simplest. If he plays that,
Like,
he's played beautifully.
Maybe I can do queen c4 here.
That's a very solid
this could
move.
work.
That's a great move. Very
Intuitively,
annoying.
I just like it immediately, but
I guess the only thing then he has to consider is, can I play rook c5 actually? Yeah, so if I take your queen, I like this a lot for you. My only...
But I guess you can do rook c5 actually.
Yeah, I need to try to keep the queens on the board, otherwise it's going to be very lost for me, so rook c5 is my only move. Does he do queen d3 or queen b3? I actually think queen c4 was the wrong move. I think rook c1 would have been good, and just to go for the pawn trade. Yeah, so I think queen c4, you did miss rook c5. Your other idea, I think, was rook c1 to trade would have been better.
Yeah.
Even if you ended up losing a pawn in something like that, just trading
doesn't
off
really
the
matter,
queens.
right?
Exactly, you just want to simplify. And that being said, it's not like I can probably save this at this position, but I'm considering bishop b5 or bishop a4. I'm actually thinking quite deeply in this position. c2 is also interesting, but then you play rook c1, and I could defend it, but then you can attack it again later on, so that's not great. Okay, I guess I need to start thinking about tricks again. I have a crazy sack idea here, but I don't think it's very good. I was looking at knight takes e4, queen takes, bishop f5, getting your queen to go somewhere else, and then c2, but I think you still block it at the end there, unfortunately. Alright, I'm just going to push c2 and try to go for something here.
I mean, sorry, rook c1 seems just super forced. I have to blockade it.
Yep. I guess I need to defend it, or I could attack your queen. Let's just try to keep things tricky. I will attack your queen first. Oh, chat, I've just been manually adjusting the clock whenever it gets too low for either of us. There's no increment. I just have admin on chess.com, so I just pop it up. It's a never-ending game. It's basically untimed.
Doesn't have that many moves to go. I guess you want to keep pressure on the pawn. It has no real moves aside from du2 and b3. I guess b3 a little bit better just because if the rook moves later, I can pick up the bishop. So pretty forced as well.
Okay, and now I need to see, can I take on e4 here? Which I think I can, but then you also win my pawn, so that's not great. But you were going to win my pawns at some point, and you've just been playing well, so there's only so much I can do. Okay, I'm looking for any final tricks I could attempt. But I'm not seeing them, so I think I need to go for knight takes e4 here and just try to grab some material back.
Okay, so the only question is, do I do rook takes pawn or knight takes pawn, I think? Rook takes pawn is just super forcing of trades, so I feel like that's my natural inclination. Any other things to consider? No, I think it's just clear. This is just the force and then promote the a pawn later, or force you to sack your bishop into it. Something like that.
Yeah, rook takes c2, correct move here. So now I need to decide, can I try knight c3, but you could probably attack it, and that would be...
Yeah.
Although, knight c3 is at least interesting. Okay, I'm gonna go for knight c3 here. With my admin powers, I'm gonna get another queen? No.
I mean, rook takes knight is just cool, because after rook takes back, I win the bishop, so I win 2 minor pieces for the rook.
Yes. Yes, that's a great move.
And then even harder for you to stop the...
Although it's actually...
harder for you to stop the pawn, you just have fewer pieces.
Oh, thanks, backseat driver. I should put another queen on the board. I don't think I can do that.
Although I do give up my a pawn that way, but I think this is still the best move.
Yeah, this is a nice find. I was trying to be tricky with knight c3 to get bishop a4. Again, just going for
Yeah,
desperados. But
yeah,
this is a good call. I will say this is going to start to get into an insane endgame if we trade off queens. 3 minor
yeah,
pieces versus a rook.
yeah. Let's see.
Okay. And yeah, I guess I too need to grab the pawn, because if you have the passed pawn, then I can't hope to save it into a draw.
Yeah. Okay. So I have 3 minor pieces for the rook. I definitely don't know how to win that endgame that easily.
I didn't mean for us to get in this crazy of an endgame, but it's actually very
fine.
fun.
I mean, I can force trade of queens here. Queen takes pawn, which is just forcing. Do I want to do that or not? Do I have a better move? Don't really know.
Why is he grabbing the mic like that? Because he doesn't have a mic stand, you guys.
Do I want
Be
to keep
nice.
more pieces on the board or less? I think I want to force the trade of queens because I think that there's probably some like. No, I'm just gonna do the queen takes pawn. This is the safest move.
This is definitely a safe move. There's no way you're going to lose. I do wonder if trying to keep the... Since you can't really lose, it feels like maybe trying to keep the queen on the board to force the win could have given you better chances. Because at this point, the only hard thing about your position is figuring out how to win.
Yeah, that's true.
Although you actually have quite a few ways to win even like this, so...
Yeah.
Which I will try to avoid somehow.
It's just this is risk management for me. Now I can't lose. So
That's fair. That's fair.
Well, never say never.
No, I don't think you can lose this position.
Okay.
I guess my plan as black here, well, for example, I'd guess you haven't learned to win with a bishop and a knight.
No.
But yeah, it's tricky, and also since you can't win,
It's really hard. I've learned the 2 bishops. That's not too bad.
yeah.
You just do that dance with the V shape, and then
Yeah.
bishop knight is really hard. You have to do that like cradling thing. Like you use the king. Like it's called shouldering or something.
Yeah.
Just take it around.
The W shape, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, Lance taught me like the other one too, where you use like rook versus bishop type stuff.
Oh, so you've studied some endgames.
Yeah, we studied some endgames. I forgot it as soon as I studied it, kind of thing. I think if I learned it when I was 6, I probably remember it, but you learn it at this age, it just goes right out.
Well, I learned some endgames when I was 6, and I guess I remembered some of them, but basically if you haven't played them in a long time and you don't review them, you've had some like really high-rated players mess up as well.
Yeah, well, like I heard queen versus rook isn't even that easy to do sometimes, right?
Yeah, queen versus rook can be, although queen versus rook feels like instinctively you can get it. The thing with knight and bishop, if you forget, I think it's harder to figure out on the board.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
True.
But I mean, here if I could somehow trade pawns, I'd just sack my rook for your bishop if I can. But I don't think I'll be able to trade pawns here. So it's curious if I can even get a draw somehow. All right, let's just start with a basic check. Thank you guys. I appreciate it, Crypto John and Chongli Senpai. I appreciate it. Do I learn anything from games?
So king up, just most natural move. Just develop it anyways. Seems okay.
I mean, I enjoy the games, but I do prioritize when I'm playing with someone for them to learn.
And then later put the king on g2, which looks maybe a better square for it. Also, because the pawn on f2 can become a weakness. I could get like if I do king h2 and then you do rook a2, it's a little bit annoying maybe. It's a little bit awkward. I mean, it's all the same, I guess.
Okay, bishop f1. Yeah, I mean, you could put your king to g2. It's okay. So, if you would describe your strategy here, what would it be in terms of trying to win here?
I think just king escort the pawns up, and then try to put 2-3 attackers on the weakest pawn you have, because I have 3 attackers, so it's
exactly.
be able to take a piece.
Once you start, if you're able to win my pawns, you win the game. So if you're able to do that, exactly. So let's see if I can. I'm gonna try to make this as hard as possible.
This pawn structure is good, in theory, good for me, because if I put my king on g2, you just can't check me ever.
Yeah, so I had one feel good check, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So I guess my strategy needs to be to try to make it as hard for you to put any pressure on my pawns with multiple pieces, and try to trade them off as quickly as possible. But sadly, I don't see it. Okay, yeah, I need to trade the pawn, so let's go for something like this.
So now your biggest pawn weakness is probably on g6.
Thank
If I
you,
can
GM
get my
Artunian.
bishop
I really
to-
appreciate the raid. Thanks so
like
much.
something like king g2, bishop b5 to go e8. A little bit slow, but I think that's...
King G2 makes sense. You need to get out of the pin. Am I going to ever get any trades in here? It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. Endgames are actually my favorite part of chess.
I like endgames too.
Very relaxing.
Yes.
Well, at
Okay, so
times.
not at times. Yeah. Actually, I really can't stand endgames and blitz because it's just like, you know, like you're up the whole game and then you like blunder a stalemate or something.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's the worst.
It's brutal.
Studies. Okay, so I gotta either move the knight or protect it. Protecting it seems not as good just because the knight will have to be on c4, just a worse square. So I might just do knight f3, just like a very safe position.
So G5, you're not gonna trade right away, although even one traded pawn I would start being happy with. I wonder if you could checkmate with 2 knights and a bishop. I mean, I know technically you can, and you could probably solve it, but that would be fun.
I think I can figure out. I think 2 knights and a bishop should be doable, just because it'll be fun, but it just controls so much space. I don't know. It feels okay because you can do the knight and bishop, and then you just bring your other knight in. But then you might stalemate. I think the problem is much more likely to stalemate with that many pieces.
Yeah, you have to be very careful. Okay, I have a plan to try and get closer to drawing this as black. If you trade a knight for 2 pawns, the only thing you have to be careful about is if I somehow trade a pawn and leave you in a bishop and knight endgame.
Yeah, true.
But again, technically you could figure it out.
But I can't. 0 chance to figure that out.
You played very well, I believe.
Not in 100 moves, I think. Maybe if you give me 1,000 moves.
50 moves for the 50 move rule.
I should have kept the queen on the board. So this is stupid.
That's why I brought it up.
Keeping
the queen. Cause you wouldn't. I understand that you were trying to make sure you don't lose, but it would have been very hard for you to lose.
It was loser mentality to do that. Yeah.
You're very tough on yourself.
Very tough on myself. No, we actually always talk about like loser mentality when we have a position or trades. It's like, what would like loser mentality be, in a situation? It's something like, when
so what would loser mentality be in a trade?
It would be like if you bought, like, let's say Solana Saft, and then like on the unlock, you just want to take the quick win or something like that.
Oh.
The kind of thing where like it's the easy exit for a small gain.
Got it.
Kind of thing versus waiting through the event itself.
Got it.
It's like to protect a win. Usually the biggest trading mistakes are when people want to protect a win because they kind of, psychologically people over preference lots of small wins.
Yeah.
As opposed to trying to just do the right thing, to do the most plus EV thing. And you find this in all walks of life where people just desperately want to do like 10 wins in a row no matter how small they are.
Yeah, because it feels good to ensure
exactly
a win.
Because the brain is neurologically wired to crave multiple wins.
Yeah.
Usually you get punished for that kind of thing. So anyways, that's what I did.
That's a cool analogy there.
So I check, you do king e6 to harass my knight. Then I do bishop c4. Now I have a discovery as well. And your king is further from your pawns. I think I like a check here. And I'm just not too worried about anything per se.
Okay, yeah, I don't like bishop king e6 because of bishop c4, but king g6 was actually what I considered first, but 95 is I could get mated if I play king g6 95 king h5 and you come in with knight f6. That's actually a very cute checkmate.
It's true. Didn't see that.
Okay, I think I still have to play king e6 then. Sorry, chat said the mic store doesn't take ETH. Sad. There's been a lot of...
Is there a lot of feedback now on the mic?
No, your mic is great. It was just because you're holding it, so people were joking about that. There's been a lot of funny comments in chat, but that was the first one that made me laugh aloud.
You know, I'm really bad with like physically installing things. Like I probably can't install IKEA furniture at this point. Like I wouldn't be able to follow the instructions to do so. It's just really difficult. I don't know.
Or I just feel like you wouldn't have the patience to do it.
Yeah, it's some
the
kind of
patience
combo of the
thing.
patience or whatever. Yeah, like so I think this mic when I ordered it, it came with a stand. I spent like 5 minutes trying to figure it out, and then I just threw away the stand or something like that. And I'm like, I can just hold it.
So now you take calls holding the mic.
Well, I very rarely do podcasts now, so I don't. I mean, if I just do a call, I'll just use my. I'll just like freebase it, right? Like
Okay.
I'll just talk into the computer.
Yeah, no, that makes
Or I
sense.
talk into the phone. But for this, I wanted to make sure the audio quality was
I appreciate it. Thank you.
to the standard of such a stream. Yeah. So this is just forced. This is just a solid
Okay.
setup. I feel because I can have a double check too,
You can have a double check.
which are always good.
Yeah, this is starting to get tricky. Okay, I think so. I need to consider if I want to attack your bishop or if I want to try to grab some pawns or get out of check. Not a lot of options. I'm worried that if I take on h4, it's gonna hurt my chances of trading off 2 pawns, which I think is one of my better drawing chances.
True.
But at this point, I don't think I'll trade it another way. So I guess I'll go for it.
I mean, taking the knight just seems better because then I'm attacking your other pawn immediately, and it can get a little bit awkward for you.
Yeah, you also have a really nice pawn structure.
Yeah, I want to keep my pawns connected, so pawn takes pawn is bad. So, because I need to keep the pawn threat alive, so I like giving a check first. Give a double check first, and you can't move toward me. You'll probably go f6, and then I take with the knight, and because it's a light square, I will be able to collect it pretty easily.
I don't think I'm gonna get my pawns off here.
I was taught early on that if you can do a double check, you almost always should. But that's probably like it's gonna hurt me at some point.
I've never heard that before.
Well, it's because I do a lot of tactics, and when you do tactics, the answer is always a double check.
Oh yeah,
at my level.
yeah. If
Like-
you're solving for puzzles, for sure.
Yeah, so I'm a simple man. I see a double check, do it.
That's reasonable. I do think sometimes though tactics then train bad habits though.
No, it definitely does. It definitely does.
Okay, now my pawns are in a bad position. I was trying to trade, but you didn't let me get away with it. Here I just have to try a couple more things.
Okay, so bishop under attack. Obviously, I want to add pressure to your f5 pawn. So bishop d3 seems the most natural. At the same time, are there any better moves? How are my checks? Knight checks d5, knight checks h5.
You've come
fear is-
so far.
It'll come so far. I'm gonna stalemate this. Pretty sure.
No.
I would hedge here. I would buy some stalemate options on myself
Yeah.
to just hedge it in. No. I mean, knight h5, kind of interesting because the king can't go to g6. So if the king goes back, then it's nice for me, right? I can just put double pressure on f5 and take it. I feel like space-wise, it's a nice control because I also blockade your h pawn. And so I think just taking space-wise, it's kind of nice. I mean, if you do king e5, then you're kind of later on just like completely abandoning your h pawn. So I think I give a check first is reasonable here.
Okay, and if I play king g5?
Play king g5.
I think you have a cool forced mate if I try to win your knight, actually. Oh wait, maybe not. Maybe not. Never mind.
Yeah, so if you go there, I just do pawn f4 check, and then if take the knight, then bishop f7 is that?
F7, I could go to g4, but you do
True.
have a mate on e2, which is actually
Right.
very pretty.
That's cool.
That is a very cool mate.
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course, because I need to cover the escape square. Yeah. So the bishop. Yeah. If you come king g5.
Yeah, and I
True.
don't think I can avoid it, so I cannot do that.
That's actually interesting because my initial plan was just to defend the knight with the bishop. If
Right.
it came for me, but it turns out that,
You could just checkmate. But I
just
mean,
mate.
Bishop f7 would have been fine as well. Okay, yeah. So I guess I need to run and not get checkmated, so here we go. Alex, whose team are you on? I mean, this whole game has been about chatting casually and like trying to give some chess tips.
Knight check on g6 is bad because I want to control space. I want to have pressure on 5. Bishop, just keep leaving it there. Maybe pawn f4 check. Pawn f4 check is good because you just keep having to move your king to a worse place. Like if your king abandons your pawns, then I just win. So I need to create the abandoning of your pawns.
Yeah, I don't like that I'm being forced away. Okay, well, I don't have any squares to defend it, so I gotta go to d4. Yep. Okay, so now I can't defend anything anymore, which is rough. I'll try this. I think I have one last trap I can try here.
Okay. So I can either bishop takes or knight takes check first. Knight takes check first is... It's interesting. You can't approach me because I control every square. And then I'm also attacking h6 after. Is there a trick here? Let's say there's a trick.
I more mean like trick in this endgame if I somehow am able to pull off any last sacks on your 2 pawns, but that's about it.
Yeah, so like you probably do rook a5 to just attack 2 pieces.
So chat, my only chance is to somehow sack my rook for 2 pawns, and then he has to try to checkmate, which is a little more complicated. No, he's very close, but he's being thorough, which I respect.
Yeah, I think we just do that.
Okay.
Now bishop hanging. We have some cool moves like g7 to just defend everything, but does that work? No, because after rook takes bishop, knight takes, and then knight hangs. On the other hand, the nice move is knight f, g7, just protects everything. Just a nice position. The pawn is blockaded. I go collect it with the king later. The bishop is guarding. The bishop blocks the 6th rank. You just win. I think. Do that.
I don't like the sound of that. For myself, not for you.
Okay, we'll do it then. I think this is fine.
Okay. Yeah, that is a nice move, and I like this better than the other knight moving also.
Yeah.
Okay, so what can we try here? Okay. At this point, I'm just going to try defending moves. I don't have a lot of traps, so I think you'll finish it off, but I want to see the finale.
It's just awkward because your king is kind of covering f5. And so if I can't bring my king over to collect the pawn. If I move my knight, then my bishop is hanging. So it's all a little bit awkward. It's either pawn g4 to go king g3, or it's pawn f5. Does it even matter? It might not even matter. I think it's all winning, probably, at this point.
I feel like it's almost all winning, yeah.
Yeah, it's almost all just winning. I guess pawn f5 is a super safe move. Bishop pawn. Also simple man. If you create the bishop pawn pair, you should do it. Just take away a square from my knight. Then my knight can move now permanently because the bishop is... And if you trade it off, I still have a pawn, and then I just win. So you didn't manage to trade it off all the pawns.
Yep.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah. F5 I think is the most straightforward here, since you're protecting almost all of the squares. Okay, so let's try this.
So I think h3 is probably forced here.
Yep.
Just hide behind. Now what do we have? We just push all the way and we win. Can we do that yet or no? We don't cover the promotion square. F8. On the other hand, we can just block everything with bishop f5 type moves. And if you sack everything, I promote anyways. So it's like you just promote, I think.
Yeah, this is hard. That's why I don't like doing tactics when the computer gives a solution, because they often don't do the most challenging move for humans to find. Let's see if there's any other stuff I could try to test here. Okay, I'll play here.
So obviously if you sack, then I just win anyway, so I'm not worried about the sack. Yeah, so the bishop blockade idea. The f5 check, and if takes, king takes, pawn promotes, and it's win. So bishop blockade and then just push seems to be just the right idea still. I think that works. Okay. And then I think I can just push. I think. There are any stalemates coming. Wait, am I gonna get mated? Hang on.
Did you see how silent I was?
Whoa. Yeah. It would actually be so bad to play so slow the whole time and then just like promote here.
No, that would be brutal. But you didn't, so it's okay.
So I just need to. I mean, this is forced. I have to do king h4, and then I have an escape via the bishop block on h3, right? And then that's just should just be safe forever.
Okay, yeah, the mate was spotted.
There's no mate, right? There is no mate.
No, you're right. That's good. I don't have any mate here, and I don't have any stalemate. My last attempt is foiled.
I need to keep your rook. Alive. If your rook dies, maybe.
Actually, okay.
Chances of stalemate.
I could technically still try for a couple stalemates
no, it's okay.
here. Let me just see if there's any last tricks, but otherwise, I think you got it. Yeah, I don't think there's any last tricks here for black. I think you play this game after the piece sack beautifully. I'll do my final check.
Final check.
Yeah, also some people
After
might check
takes,
got confused with the mate. Yeah, I don't think there's any more stalemate threats here. I think at this point I would give it to you. Nice job!